Hey guys, it's Ann Yorks and I have a brand new cookie tutorial for you. I am so excited to be bringing you this tutorial just in time for holiday cookie decorating. I am going to show you how to make 5 completely adorable Christmas faces. Now some of these might look familiar, but for the first time, all these cutters and resources are organized into the Christmas face cookie decorating kit. You can find these cutters and essentials on flowerbox.com. Plus, in this kit, brand new and looking spectacular, is none other than Mrs. Claus herself. So I hope you enjoy this close-up look on how to make these 5 cute cookies. Let's cookie it up. Let's start with Mrs. Claus. I designed this cookie cutter with the team at Ann Clark, and I just think she is the cutest. So I'm going to start this cookie by outlining all of the different icing areas using piping icing and tip number 2. I start with the hairline first in white icing, and then I outline her face using the sienna piping icing, and finish off with her collar using the super red piping icing. If you're looking for tips on how to make these icing colors for this complete set, check out the blog post with an icing color guide that is ready for you to use. Now it's time to flood in these different sections. I'm going to flood in her face first using a 10-second flood icing, and then I'll let that section dry before I go in and flood the red collar and the white hair. Now for a good review on icing consistencies, check out the blog post for a link to a video all about making royal icing and making the piping and 10-second flood icing consistency. Now she's almost done. I'm just going to use my scribe tool to bring the hair down over her ears just to give a more realistic look and add some dimension to her face. Now once that hair section has a chance to dry, I'm ready to add her red hairband. I just pipe and outline and flood in that skinny little section, tapping icing into place using the scribe tool. Now I'm ready for the details. I'm still using tip number 2 on my piping icing, and I'm just adding some texture to her hair. For her eyes, I'm actually using flood icing. So I'm using black flood icing, and I just add 2 dots. Those dots will always spread a little wider than you think. So make those dots smaller than you actually want the eye size to be. And then I add a teeny tiny little dot of white for the catchlight. I add a little tiny dot of sienna for her nose. And now I'm using flood icing for her lips. So I'm just adding the general shape of her lips, and I'm going to use my scribe tool just to work that icing into the lip shape, pulling the icing out in the corners of her mouth. And I always try to pull that icing up just so it almost looks like a little bit of a smile. Don't forget Mrs. Claus's pearl earrings. They just complete the face. Okay, so now is the fun part. We're gonna add a little bit of holly. And I found these green leaf sprinkles from Wilton. I just love that the color is nice and bold. The sprinkle has a little bit of shine to it, and the leaf has some texture. So they're not technically holly, but they really do give the impression of holly. Pipe a line of red royal icing. That'll be the glue to hold those leaves in place. Then you can place those leaves on top of the lines. That'll just hold them in place. And this holly's almost done. Just pipe those 3 dots and the embellishment on her collar is ready to go. Now let's bring this cookie face to life. I'm using a carnation pink crystal color, which is a powder food color. It is FDA approved and edible. And I'm using a round brush just to swirl that color onto Mrs. Claus's cheeks and it just gives her a nice rosy glow. That carnation pink and the round brush, they're also in the Cookie Faces kit, so definitely check that out on flowerbox.com. Now for the final details, I added a piped line on her lips, and I'm using a black food safe marker for her eyelashes. Sometimes it's helpful to turn that cookie upside down just to get those eyelashes drawn in just the right place. I also like to let the eyes dry before I add the eyelashes, just to make sure I don't put any dents in the eyes. And now Mrs. Claus is ready for the Christmas party. The Snowman face cutter is such a versatile cutter, but today I'm using it as a snowman. In the past, I've used it as a leprechaun, a pilgrim, and upside down, I even made a really cute ghost. So this is definitely one cutter to have in your cookie cutter bin. I am just cutting out the oval for the snowman face just to guide that piped line, and I'm tracing it on using a yellow food marker. Then I'm ready to outline with white icing and tip number 2. I'm using black piping icing with tip number 2 to outline the hat sections on top of the snowman, and then I'm just going to flood in those alternating icing areas, the black on the top and the white on the face. This is especially helpful to let those icing areas dry before flooding in that icing area in the center. Not only does it add a nice dimension to the cookie, but it really prevents color bleeding between the black and the white icing. So once all of those sections are fully dry, I'm going to add the carrot nose. I'm using orange piping icing in tip number 2, and also the holly on the snowman's hat. Now you can use those really fun Wilton leaf sprinkles for this holly, but if you don't have those, you can always pipe and flood them just using royal icing like I'm doing here. Allow those small little sections to dry for just 15 or 20 minutes in front of the fan, and then you can move on to the rest of these details. This snowman is also getting the blushed cheeks, and I'm also going to be adding his eyes. Now Mrs. Claus's eyes were more of a circle shape, and this snowman's, his eyes are more of an oval shape. And remember, this icing, this flood icing will spread, so make those a little smaller than you think you need them, just allowing room for them to spread out. A little catch light with your white icing. Don't even squeeze the bag, just let one drop fall out of the bag, and that will be big enough for that little catch light. Pipe a smile using black details, 3 dots for the berries, and then I add a highlight on the brim of the hat, and this snowman is all done. This Santa Claus is a new cookie cutter that I designed this year with the team at Ann Clark, and it is featured in my book, The Crafted Cookie. So now I'm going to show you the video on how to make these cookies, but if you love step-by-step instructions, check out The Crafted Cookie. You can find this book on flowerbox.com, and it has the rest of the 3 cookies that I'm going to show you. This Santa, the elf, and also the reindeer are all featured in the book. So here's how you make him. I like to start with his pom-pom first, and then I outline the fur on his hat. Now the face can seem tricky, but I always start off with almost a parentheses style on the side of his face. And once I have the sides of his face piped, I'm ready to add 2 curved lines for his cheeks. And that really takes out all the trickiness from this cookie. Now you're ready to just finish off the beard and outline the red hat. Again, we're flooding in alternating icing areas, just allowing those to dry so that we don't see any color bleeding and we get that nice dimension. So I'm flooding in his face using sienna and the red on his hat. Now we're gonna add the fur on his hat, but one of the things that makes this cookie so much fun is the texture on the hat. I'm using white nonpareils, and these are in the Christmas Faces cookie decorating kit. I'm just gonna place my cookie on a coffee filter and pour those white nonpareils onto the wet icing. Shake off any of those extras, or even use your scribe just to pop those out of there. And now you're ready to flood in the rest of those areas. But before you do, use that coffee filter as a funnel and just pour those sprinkles right back into the container. Let's finish off this flood. I'm going to flood in the pom-pom and the beard nice and generously using my white flood icing. Then we'll let this section dry completely before we come back and add Santa's mustache. The mustache can be intimidating for me sometimes, so this is the trick that I always do. I like to pipe the top of Santa's mustache first, just following the shape of his cheeks and bringing a curl around to the side of his face. And once I have that start to it, then I can finish off the bottom section of the mustache with a piped line and flood in those icing areas. That keeps Santa's mustache looking pretty consistent from cookie to cookie when you follow those cheek lines, just like I showed you. Now we're gonna give this Santa a jolly glow with our carnation pink and the round food safe brush from Wilton. I'm using sienna piped icing for Santa's lips, and I'm going to add Santa's nose using sienna flood icing. I want that nose to be nice and large and round, and that flood icing will flow smooth, keeping that detail nice and rounded. I'm adding a simple dot of black for Santa's eyes, and then I'm overlapping 4 dots of white, almost like a small little icing bead border for those fun bushy eyebrows. Now Santa's almost done, but we're gonna add a little holly to his hat. So again, I have those green leaf sprinkles from Wilton. These are in the kit, and I'm just adding a piped line as glue and placing those sprinkles on top. Just gently press down, and those holly leaves are in place. Now we're ready to add the 3 piped berries. The final touch, a little peppermint swirl on Santa's hat. And this cookie is going to be the star of the platter. Now Santa needs lots of helpers during the holiday season, so of course there is an elf in this cookie set. I'm going to pipe the outline for his hat first using green piping icing and tip number 2. Then add his face using sienna piping icing and tip number 2. And add a green collar. I used white piping icing, and I'm just gonna pour some sprinkles into the coffee filter and just press that white pom-pom into the sprinkles. And if you need to nudge those sprinkles or reshape the pom-pom, you can do that while the icing is still wet, and you have those fun little sprinkles on the pom-pom. I love these sprinkles. They have a little bit of a pearl look to them, and they taste like vanilla. They are delicious. Thank you, Wilton. Now let's flood this cookie in. I'm flooding in his face using the sienna flood icing, and I'll let that section dry. Now, if you're looking for some details on different icing skin colors, there is a section in the Crafted Cookie that goes over how to make a variety of skin colors. I encourage you to check it out so that you can make cookies that look like you or your customers. Now let's flood in the green section. Once those 2 sections are flooded in, and while they are still wet, I'm using my red flood icing to add stripes and dots. This just gives the elf a little bit of a whimsical look. I'm piping an outline for the elf's hair using brown icing and tip number 2. And I like to just bring those sideburns down just a little bit over those pointed ears, just to add some interest to this cookie design. Once that hair has a chance to dry, I'm piping a white bead border across the top. This is just a small little fur area since we don't have a ton of space on this hat. Then we're gonna keep this face ultra simple. 2 dots of black for the eyes, a dot of sienna for the nose and ears, and a little swipe of black for that little side smile. Finishing off the collar is easy, a red pipeline with white dots at the tips of the collar, and this little cookie makes the perfect accent to Santa and Mrs. Claus. Don't forget to blush the cheeks. Use that carnation pink and the round brush. Just move that brush in a circular motion to get a nice, even application. Last cookie, and Santa definitely needs this guy. This reindeer, this red-nosed reindeer, is such a fun and easy cookie to make. I saved the easiest for last. First, outline the reindeer's head using brown piping icing and tip number 2, and then add some fun little antlers on the top of the head. Now, I've done this cookie several different ways, and this is a simplified version of this reindeer, and this is fun. This is great for kids to do if you're decorating with kids. You could even outline the cookie first and just let them fill in the flood icing. Once you flood in the face, you're ready to let that dry and then flood in the antlers. While you're still working on this cookie, you can also add the nice big red nose. I'm using my red flood icing just to keep the nose nice and round. And I'm going to add a little swipe of white flood icing just to add some shine or glow to that red nose. Now, I'm also going to blush the reindeer's cheeks just to keep these designs consistent, but it is interesting to see the difference between what that pink looks like on the brown background compared to the white of the snowman or the sienna. It does look different depending on which background you're adding those blush cheeks, but it really works on all 3. A few more pipe details, black icing for simple eyes and a smile, and some brown icing for ear detail and a little bit of fur on the top of the head. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this Christmas cookie tutorial. These cookies are super fun. Make one or make them all. I hope you enjoy making these throughout the entire holiday season. Again, if you are looking for the kit, information about the icing colors or bonus information about making dough and planning icing, definitely check out the blog post for this kit on flowerbox.com. Until next time, happy decorating!